Coming up on this episode of the Unusable Podcast.
Inappropriate text message.
Solving EV charging problems.
Square toilets.
For my square bum. Hello and welcome to the Unusable Podcast. A podcast for... I've lost the words. Where we discuss the importance of user experience in technology and the world around us. And we talk about great design that just works or moan about it when it doesn't. Hi,
Slick.
Andrew.
Absolutely
Slick.
As slick as it comes.
I kind of cocked it up there, but I think that nobody noticed and we probably got away with it.
Yeah. Smooth. It's not like this has been recorded or anything, is it?
No. Right. So, hi, I'm David Ball. I'm a front-end web and app developer.
And my name's Andrew Waite, and I run a software company. Can't believe someone trusts me to do that.
Yes, you do. Ask me, Andy. Right, no, there's two things. So you've done an interview, which we want to go on to fairly quick because it's fairly long. But first, ask me one thing about what I've been doing today. Ask me what I've been doing today.
What have you been doing today, David Ball?
So I went to see a company about designing a bathroom, okay? And I spent far too long...
Wait. You're designing a bathroom for a company?
No. They're designing a bathroom for me.
Oh, okay.
They are a bathroom designing company. No. I'm not that sort of designer.
I was going to say, I thought your career had taken a new turn.
I can assemble websites, but I can't assemble an ensuite bathroom.
It's the same thing, just connecting the bits together.
Well, it's very similar. It's something that has to be used and something that has to be designed to be used. And what I don't want to do is get down the... I don't want to have something that looks nice but doesn't work very well, right? And so I ended up spending far too long looking at the usability of toilets. Far too long. And the guy who's designing it says, "Oh, I'm going to show you this special one. This is my favourite toilet." And before then, he showed me. This is
a bad start. This is a bad start. He has a favourite toilet.
He showed me a few in the showroom, and they're square. Now the thing is about toilets. Well, no, the thing is about my bottom is it's not square. But it seems to be a trendy thing for toilets to be square.
So you reckon a square toilet is less ergonomic than a rounded toilet?
Well, I think so, yeah. I think that... I don't think anyone in the world has a square bottom. Anyway,
but if you think about how your knees fold, that's quite square, isn't it? Like, you know how your knees, like, if you think about your knee, the bend in your knees, that's a very square right angle, isn't it?
Maybe. I don't know. But I thought that the toilets that he showed me were no good. So that's why he showed me his favourite toilet. Now, his favourite toilet was one that was designed by Philippe Starck.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, Philippe Starck, that name rings a bell. And Philippe Starck is the French designer who created the lemon squeezer, really trendy looking lemon squeezer. Do you know what I mean?
The one that's like this, is it?
It's like a tripod. It looks like a robot from War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
And it looks amazing. It looks so cool. However, if you try and use it as a lemon squeezer, it's awful. So already I'm thinking, do I want a toilet designed by somebody who's designed something that's pretty but useless? Is that too unfair to judge? That I don't know.
I'm just thinking you're putting way too much effort into the choice of toilet. It's literally going to be it's going to be a receptacle for your feces. I mean, is it?
That's one way to put it. But also it's a place that I'm going to sit down on a lot. So yeah, I'm going to sit on that quite often. I want it to be nicely designed.
Yeah, it's one of those things as well where the design doesn't really change or hasn't really changed for a long time. So,
I mean, they made them square. That's a design change.
I'm just imagining the marketing, like Apple style marketing, like the one you've been waiting for all these years, now available, square edges. Like it's like the iPhone, how they change it from rounded corners to square corners, and then a few years later it goes back to round corners again.
And then they change the colour. Now available in white.
Yeah. Yeah, we did the last one in white.
Anyway, so I also looked at other things that Philippe Starck designed, and he's a very successful guy, a very productive guy, and he's designed a lot of really, really, really great stuff. However, I did find a YouTube video of a kettle that he designed. This is years ago, like in the 90s. And this kettle, it looks so cool. It's kind of like a bullet shape, and it's got this like funnel that goes off onto the side. And it looks super, super cool. However, the guy in the YouTube video that I watched that tried to use it, oh my god, it's the most useless thing in the world. Like he had to pour the water. Like he couldn't get it under the sink for a start, because the way that you pour water into it has to go down this little funnel thing.
Oh god!
And then it's not an electric kettle, so you have to put it on a hob. So he does that whilst also explaining that when you pour it, sometimes steam comes out of this like funnel thing and burns your arm, which is weird. And what else? So he eventually boiled, and he poured it out, and he like tipped it up. And I'm thinking, oh, the water's going to come out at some point. He tipped up a bit more. No water's coming out. He tipped up a bit more. And then like the water just like all kind of shot out at once and just went everywhere. It is the most useless kettle that there is. But it looks very nice.
Do not buy a Philippe Starck toilet then. On this basis, I think you've made a decision.
Yeah, maybe.
I feel like next podcast you need to fill us in on what toilet you chose and why.
I don't think anyone cares about that.
well, you've just told them loads of stuff about it. So
anyway, moving on. Shall we talk about your interview that you have done?
Yes. Well, so I'm a little bit embarrassed. Is embarrassed the right word? So I originally recorded this a long time ago, back in October, I think, with Wolfgang Bremer, and because I'm a bad person, it's only just last week that I finally was able to edit it down. So yeah, he is head of design at a company called Elli. They're part of the Volkswagen Group, and they do chargers for EVs. Mm-hmm. So had a really interesting chat with him, David.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Should we have a listen?
Let's go. So, Wolfgang, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Would you like to give us a quick intro about yourself?
Yes, sure. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks so much for having me. It's really a pleasure being on the show. My name is Wolfgang. I'm the head of design at Elli, which stands for Electric Life. The longer name is Volkswagen Group Charging, which is really a mouthful, I guess. And we're part of the Volkswagen Group, and we deal with everything energy and car related, I would say. And I'm based out of Berlin, Germany. And today the weather is really bad. So I hope it's better on your end.
Oh no, it's grey outside, but at least it's dry. Typical British weather.
Yeah, I think we got some of this over here now as well.
But we share a passion for cars, though, right, Wolfgang? Like I know you're in the industry, right? You're in the EV industry. But I think you had a classic Mercedes, right?
That's right. Yeah, I inherited from my dad like a 1987 300 SL in red, nice convertible, and it was really a pleasure to drive. I always had to take a lot of care, it's like, should I really take this car to drive there? What if somebody dings it, opening the doors? And it was like, it's almost, I want to say sometimes it feels more like a hassle, but it's so nice if the weather's just nice and you drive the car slowly and somewhere through, I don't know, I guess take a nice drive somewhere. And so it's more like the drive is the destination than actually reaching a destination. And unfortunately, a couple of years ago, I had to sell it because we were moving from Berlin to Vancouver, BC. And I looked into bringing the car over, which might still be affordable, I guess. But there were so many, small things like, oh, what if this is not filled out properly and that? And then a line somewhere caught my eye where it said in the worst case, you will basically have to destroy your car. And they literally said, destroy your car. And I was like, what? If I fill out the paperwork wrong, you just crush it into a little cube of metal kind of thing? And I couldn't deal with this. I was like, maybe that's some kind of sign. Maybe don't bring the car over kind of thing. And I'm sure I would have needed to do some stuff to the car over there anyways, like regulations and regarding lights and tires and I don't know what. So I decided, okay, maybe it's not the best car to bring over or to have, with back then our older daughter, she was just born a couple of months ago. So I decided, okay, let's sell the car. with a smiling heart, with a smiling eye and a crying eye, I guess. But yeah, so since then I don't have the car anymore, and we don't have any car here in Berlin because we use public transport. But yes, I really like cars. Like the way that they look, they sound, the stuff you can do with them, the kind of freedom, I guess, they give you, like in Germany, when you turn 18, you can get your driver's license. And I think in some areas when you turn 17. But I think when I was younger, it was really something to look forward to. It was like, oh, once I get my driver's license, I can just go for a ride somewhere.
It's the freedom, isn't it? It's unlocking that freedom and being able to go on your own terms. I think that's the thing that people love and look forward to.
Absolutely.
So given we're both sort of car geeks, for want of a better term, obviously you're in the industry of EV charging, and I think that's really exciting because obviously the auto industry right now is going through a massive shift from fossil fuels to EVs and other alternative fuels. So I thought it'd be interesting to just have a talk about how UX and UI plays into the switch away from fossil fuels, essentially. What role does UI UX play in getting people on board with the switch from fossil fuels towards a cleaner and a brighter future? So yeah, when you look at the EV market right now, one of the reasons a lot of people cite for not bothering to switch is it's usually the same old things. It takes too long to charge, it doesn't have enough range. I mean, to what extent do you think that UX is crucial in the switch to EVs and other forms of alternative propulsion, in transportation?
I think it's very, very important, to be honest, because for me, it's usually like as a designer to take a step back and look at the current situation, right? And only because we suddenly have, I guess it's very similar vehicles, but they just are fueled in a different way or charged basically in a different way, right? So instead of putting gas or diesel into them, you fill them up with electricity. And it doesn't have to just one-on-one convert, like nowadays, you have a car, you drive to a gas station, you refill your car within a couple of minutes, and then you pay, and then you drive back home or you're on your way kind of thing. So if you would translate this one-to-one to an EV, I'm not sure if that is the best solution. It's like, humans are creatures of habit, right? We often think like, this works, why not do it the same way? So we have like, let's say an electricity station, we drive with the EV there, we recharge it, which obviously nowadays takes longer than refilling an engine-powered car. But then we would pay and we would be on our way again. And I find this is something we should not just translate one-to-one. We should look at the experience overall. Like as we said, there's an opportunity there basically to make something out of the situation, especially when it takes longer to charge the car. Like what can you actually do in the time? And do you actually, in the first place, have to drive to a place to charge your car? Because there's so many opportunities we could take, like charging at home, via wall boxes in your garage, or maybe charge on the street via charging via lampposts. There's all these kind of opportunities which actually can make it easier and less that you have to get out of your way or to go out of your way to drive to somewhere to recharge or refill your car. So it's something we should really consider from the ground up, I would say. So there's a lot of opportunity there to do the right thing, but it takes time, I would say, and really a careful eye to see what can be done, what could be done, how could things be done, and what would actually lead to a benefit for the planet and for the people using it, instead of sticking to the old, to the same old rhythm, I guess.
Yeah, I think something you touched on there is it's also not just about the experience, but also about the education piece. You see, you don't have to look very far online when you see, I don't know, a review of an electric car or something, and you'll get the comments section full of people with the same mindset. They'll and the same objections, right? It doesn't charge up fast enough, or the range isn't enough, or all these different things. And you just said there, maybe those things don't matter so much if you are charging it, say, overnight at home. But I think that part of it is the UX, but there's education as well, potentially cost. There's lots of barriers, isn't there? But I don't know how you see. Do you think UX is the main one? Do you think if we solve the UX of these things, then everything else will follow, or do you think the price of EVs needs to come down, or how do you see the split of things? Do you think we need all these things right for everyone to adopt EVs? I'm kind of interested in all these different factors and how you see them coming together.
Yeah, I think there's, I guess with like with most of the things, there's different angles and different point of views. And there's usually like the group of people, I don't know, like the early adopters, let's say, right, who willingly jump into something which might not be as good as a competing or existing product yet, I guess. But they're willing to take a leap of faith kind of thing to see, oh, that sounds really interesting, or I'm doing it for a good reason. Like, like with EV charging, for example, like making the planet a better place kind of thing and like taking care of the planet really, or in a better way. So people take this leap of faith to, even if it's a bit more of a hassle nowadays, to try it and do the right thing, let's say, versus people who are where convenience matters more, or people who are busy, I don't know, like people who are on the road a lot and then need to maybe factor in that charging nowadays takes a little bit longer, So it really depends on the point of view. But I think a lot of things have to come together, like from experience point of view, from the pricing point, from educating people why it would be a better choice to choose an EV over another type of car, and all these kind of things, like the stars have to be aligned kind of thing. And I think it has to be tackled from many directions at the same time.
Yeah, I'm reminded of the old product adoption curve of, you get the early sort of innovators that adopt it, early adopters, that kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen this, the graph where adoption kind of goes up as different segments of the market, and then at the end you get the laggard. I think is it laggards at the end are the last people who are kind of stubbornly in their old ways. They're the last ones who will adopt change and something new. But obviously, the whole EV thing has to go through that through that curve and through that process. So I asked a few of my friends, what questions do you have, about how UX can play into the adoption of EVs, and also more widely, the adoption of greener things, like, for example, heat pumps instead of gas boilers in people's homes. And I had a few interesting questions, but one of the biggest ones about EVs was actually, if you have no off-street parking, if you don't have a driveway, if you don't have a garage, if you rely on parking your car on the road, that seems a real limiting factor for people in terms of the adoption of EVs. And more so, that seems to almost create it's going to impact the people worse off in our society the most. People who, generally speaking, people who don't have access to off-road parking are going to be lower income families. And I'm just wondering how you see that playing out. Are the solutions coming to those kinds of problems? Is that something that you're thinking about, that the industry is thinking about?
Yeah, I think so. So, for example, I saw the other day just now, I think on LinkedIn or somewhere, pictures being shared again of, in another country, lamppost charging, like you have on the street usually lampposts, and as you connect to the grid right there, and you can plug your car right into the lamppost. So existing infrastructure, reusing it or partially repurposing it so that the people on the street can charge their cars right there. And I think it's really interesting because like these kind of things, because if you think about it, like the people who have gas-powered cars, they don't have a gas station at home either, right? So if they want to actually refill their car, they have to drive to a gas station to refill their car. Granted, it will not take that long, but they have to get out of the way to actually do that, Whereas with an EV, if you are lucky enough to have your own garage or underground parking, you can potentially do this at home, like at any point in time. So it's actually a benefit over driving somewhere else to rejuice your car.
Of course.
And you can still do the lamppost charging, or you can drive to a charging station, And there's more and more, I guess, depending on where you live, more inside the city or countryside, and depending on the country as well, for sure. Like the infrastructure, right? It's being built up and ramped up from different parties. And I would say it depends, as designers love to say, right? So if you're in luck, I know a friend of mine, he refuses to install a wall box at home because he lives right down the street from a high-powered charger, and he rather drives over there with his phone or laptop, for like 20 minutes and fills the car up to 80% and drives back, or is on his way then to the highway, whatever, And he says, like, why would I pay whatever amount to install this thing at home when I can just drive down the street to refill my car within a couple of minutes, basically?
Do you think we risk creating a little bit of a two-tier system, though? Because, as you mentioned, at the moment, everyone has to go to what I would call a petrol station or a gas station, depending on what part of the world you're from. But everyone pays the same rate, whether you are wealthy and have a big house with a driveway, or whether maybe you're less well off and, you don't have that facility available to you, you're going to pay the same rate for fuel. Whereas with electricity, if you've got a home wall box, that might be a lower unit rate that you're paying for that because that's coming off your house electricity. Whereas, at least in the UK right now, using public charging infrastructure is considerably more expensive. And I personally am quite concerned about creating a two-tier system here where we are penalising the people that have to rely on public charging, the charge points that are, on the street or, at a public service station or something like that. Is that a concern for you? Is there an awareness in the industry as well? Is there a general feeling, hey, there's a problem here we need to address, or is it, is nobody really worried about it? I'm kind of interested, for your insider thoughts on whether anyone's really thinking about that or tackling it.
Yes, I think especially nowadays or these days, the price of electricity is, I think, pretty much on top of the mind for everybody involved in it, and to think how this impacts the industry, right? Just like sometimes a fluctuation with oil prices for the gas has an impact there, So I think it's definitely there. And I think depending on the company, they are trying to do something about it. Can we lower the price here and there? Can we offer a different kind of tariff, And usually it's like, I would say as somebody who's new to the EV stuff, it's like how you charge a car and how you pay for it, like these kind of tariffs, you don't usually just drive. I mean, you can drive to a charging station and just pay as you go, let's say. But often you can also book like with the cell phone company, you have like your monthly price for something, like a base price, and then the price per kilowatt hour is lower, for example, right? So there's other options the companies could offer, like, oh, maybe we can lower this price and adapt here to the market conditions and stuff, right? So I don't think we definitely don't want to create a divide in the people, right? Like allowing some people to charge, and this, I think definitely not. I think we rather want to do the opposite, right? That we want to encourage people and enable people to drive greener cars, which are better for the environment and are affordable to no matter who, right? And if you look in the car industry, I think there's so many brands now building EVs in all certain kinds of brackets, like from really, really small cars to medium-sized cars to luxury cars, like you can find anything, pretty much anything in any kind of price level, right? So I think the industry is very trying to address it as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I find personally quite interesting is as we move towards green energy creation, so away from things like coal and gas to generate our electricity, towards renewables like solar, wind, wave power, things like that, that you have a problem, which is that with gas, you can just turn up the gas and you'll get more electricity. So as demand changes through the day, or if you have a spike in demand, you're able to meet that demand by generating more. The problem with a lot of renewables, obviously, is that you can't just say turn up the wind. You can't just turn up the sun when you want more of it. So we have this problem where there is a gap between the demand and the generation. You might generate loads of electricity in the day when there's low demand, but then everyone goes home and turns their lights on and their heating on, and there is huge demand, but there's no supply anymore. So trying to align supply and demand, I found that quite an interesting area to look at. And I just wondered how you see EVs can play into that, with things like, I don't know, maybe tiered charging or charging for different times in the day. I don't know if there's anything that kind of insight there that you have into that sort of aligning demand and generation of the power that we use.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, actually. And I think it goes beyond just EVs and like the grid, the power grid in that sense, because so at least in Germany, it's also about, and I'm sure in other countries as well, it's about like when you nowadays, I think, I'm not sure if it's whole of Germany or only Berlin where I live, but if you nowadays want to redo your roof or build a new house, I think you're already forced to put EV panels on your roof. There's a law, you have to do that to collect energy and make use of the energy to be less dependent on, things, let's say. And I think that is like one very important step, right? Not just to rely like, I have a power plug at home, I can plug anything in and I hope juice comes out no matter what time of the day. But I think the point you're addressing is very important. Like when everybody comes home at 5-ish p.m., and plugs in their EVs or their hair dryers, we don't want the planet to explode in that sense. I'm not sure if you know this old show, Alf, I think his planet exploded because they all plugged in their hair dryers at the Pacific show. And it's quite funny actually, 20 years ago or so. And I think what from the car industry we are trying to do is bidirectional charging. So what we are trying to do is to enable EVs to become basically mobile power banks. Right? So you can store a lot of energy or electricity in a car, and you can also take the energy out again, not only to use the energy to drive the car, but when you come home, in the future, you will be able to feed this energy back into the house. So for example, if you have a power outage, you basically won't even notice because it seamlessly, it will switch over to your car and it will power your house. And an EV battery is quite large, so it can power it for quite a while. And these things can be used to also balance out the grid, right? Like, as you say, like peaks and the opposite, basically, right? That we can use the cars in an area or the whole country to balance these things out. We are not there yet, but over the next couple of years, this is definitely something which will be coming. And I think this is really, again, like not just trying to one-to-one convert, okay, we are taking these vehicles and we are putting a battery into them, and that's it. But like, what can we actually do with it, which hasn't been done before? And what benefits, like plural, can we actually get out of the situation? Not like, oh, now we have to build infrastructure, negative. Oh, charging takes so long, negative, like all these things. But what are all the opportunities we actually have here? Like, you can refill your car at home. You can refill it on the street. You don't have to drive anywhere. You can power your house with it. What other things can we actually do when we get to that point? And I think there's a lot of opportunity there to invest in these areas to actually, make it better.
Yeah, I certainly think it's a super exciting industry. It has such an ability to make a positive impact on our planet, but also, there is a huge amount of investment going into it as an industry. So I think it's a very exciting space. For sure. Really interesting stuff. So one of the things that came up, so we're talking a little bit there about how we align usage, and you said, using potentially the car as a giant mobile battery, as you put it, which I think sounds super exciting. But that's quite a complicated thing. If you're taking power out of the grid, you're presumably paying for that power. But then if the car is taking energy back into the house, maybe you even put some back into the grid, you're giving the energy back to the grid. I've read various things about changing from, static unit pricing to pricing per unit of electricity that fluctuates through the day, again, depending on demand. These are quite complicated topics. And if you imagine the actual end user, they just want things to be simple, right? They just want to plug in their car, know that they can charge it. They want it all to practically work for them. They don't really want to micromanage the, I better unplug my car for 10 minutes right now because there's a sudden spike, or, these are real challenges. And also you mentioned there, that potentially there's an outage, the car takes over, you don't notice the outage, but then you come to get in your car and your car's only got, 30% charge and you can't do the journey that you're expecting to do. So I think there's a lot of challenges there. I don't know if you could speak a little bit about those challenges and what you see they are and how you think they'll be solved. Is it more automation? Is it education? What are the ways to solve that missing piece there? Because it's something complicated we're trying to solve. But I don't know. It's how do you get the user on board with it and using it?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I almost would compare to something like what Apple seemingly constantly tries to, or what Apple seemingly always is able to pull off, like stuff like AirDrop, which is, for the people who are not familiar with it, you can basically just copy and paste something from your computer to your phone and the other way around, and it usually just works. And I think this is a magnificent piece of technology they built there for it to just work almost all the time. And I think it's basically, I want to say overlooked, like it feels like magic. It just works, and I think this is something we have to get to, where people don't have to get into situations which you described, like, oh, do I have to unplug my car now because of power price, electricity price, or my car powering the house and not having enough energy for me to drive later. I think we have to be smart about it. Like the hardware, the software we build, it basically has to just work, So for example, if I would imagine it, if you drive your EV home and you plug it in with your bidirectional wall box at home, the wall box should take care, together with your home energy system, of all the things. So you don't have to think about it in that sense, right? And if, for example, you come home and your car is only at a 20% charge and your house is fine and the sun is shining with a PV system on your roof, I would assume maybe it's a good time, depending on the time of the day and the electricity cost, maybe now is a good time to charge the car. Or maybe as we talked about earlier, you come home at exactly 5 p.m. and there's a surge. Maybe the wallbox decides, yeah, now is not a good time to charge, maybe, and this is very futuristic now, right? So maybe the wallbox or the app on your phone, which is connected to that, can see your calendar and knows that you're not have planned any trips for the rest of your day. Just like when you have on your iPhone, you have a, I don't know, dentist appointment later and you have the address in, it will tell you, hey, now it's time to get going because I know where you are. I know how the traffic conditions are. I know where you want to get to. I can tell you will take at least 43 minutes and not the usual 30 minutes kind of thing. And it will tell you. So if I could think about it like this, that the energy system will know you don't need your car charged until tomorrow morning, for example, then maybe it will only start charging at 4 a.m. And maybe it happens to be that at night you have an electricity tariff where at night the electricity is cheaper than during the day, right? So it will only charge the car at night then automatically, but it will take the hassle out of it. So you don't have to make these kind of decisions in an ideal world, right? And but I think what we don't want to do is we don't want to be too smart about things, right? There should always be an option like, hey, I didn't put it in my calendar, for example. You can't know that I'm going to the dentist later, which is an hour away, or a friend who lives in the next village or something. There should always be a way to, of course, to override and say, no, I want the car charged now, no matter what. Yeah, I cannot wait until, I don't know, the sun comes out and the PV charges the car kind of thing, right? But I think there is ways to make it easy and convenient for the user without having to overthink stuff, right? To me, it's almost similar to when you ask a person who uses, let's say, an iPhone, if they ever went into the settings of the iPhone to change anything, right? And then you get the people who say, no, I never open my settings. It comes out of the box. That's the way I use it. And there's other people who say, yes, of course, I go into the settings. Like once a week, I read an article or whatever, website. Oh, you should change this setting to, I don't know, save another 1% battery on your phone. And I will go in and tweak this, or location data or whatever. So there's like these group of people where I think for some, the ones who will never enter the settings, it most likely will just work. And the other ones, sure, there will be some options probably where you can play around and can adapt and tell the machine hopefully only start charging then, or this is my power tariff really, and adjust or fine tune things, right? But overall, I think in the end, it should just work. It should take the hassle out of it, right?
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the smart thermostats that you get. So in our old home, we had a Nest thermostat. In our current home, we have a Tado, however you pronounce it, and they have controls. But I think the Nest was better probably than Tado at this, but you can leave the Nest pretty much to its own devices and it will learn when you come and go. All you have to do is say, I'm not comfortable, I'd like it a little bit hotter, please, or I'm too hot, I'd like it cooler. And the rest, it just kind of takes care of. It builds a schedule for you. It heats your home in advance of when it thinks you're going to want it warm. So it's quite clever in that regard. And I think they've done a good job personally of delivering the kind of experience that you're talking about, where it's fairly seamless and simple, but there's a lot of complexity going on under the hood. I actually thought, talking about Nest, it was quite interesting what they were doing in the US in terms of when there is a surge on the grid, because obviously in the US they use Nest to potentially control electric AC units. And what I think they built in was some kind of remote kill system. So if there was a sudden surge on the grid, they could remote kill the Nest thermostats for, say, a period of 15 minutes. So people wouldn't notice, 15 minutes isn't enough for the home to heat up to a point where they notice that they're uncomfortable, but you're just saying, let's just kill the demand just for 15 minutes, and then we can allow that to continue. But I do think that kind of thing is really interesting. Can you coordinate together EVs, the energy grid, all these batteries, all these consumers, all these different devices, but in a very intelligent, almost like Hive energy grid, where everything talks to everything and it's all kind of seamlessly. I mean, I appreciate I'm talking about a dream future world, but I think that's a really exciting thing, but also it presents so many challenges. I find it so strange, giving Nest consent to shut my heating or AC off. Yeah, Nest, go ahead. If you need to shut my heating or cooling off, go ahead and do it. I find that a really strange, from both a moral and a legal standpoint. There's so many challenges here to solve. for people in the industry.
Yeah, I think it's definitely not an easy feat. But if I think about it, like for example, the technology we're using like right now, to talk over the internet via potentially different computers and setups and stuff, and it works, right? Or before that, like telephones and stuff, right? Across countries, over the big pond and stuff, so it's like. It's possible, right? And I think yes, it's complex for sure, and it will definitely require smart people to come together to find meaningful solutions. But I think partially this is already what's happening. So we are planning to build a house, and we are looking into having for the heater like one of those heat pumps, and then I read a little bit about and a PV system and so forth. So I was reading about that when you want to collect energy and you want to be able to feed it back to the grid via this heat pump system and so forth, here, at least in the area, you have to agree to them being able to remotely shut off your heat pumps at times. So that like the system for putting the energy back and getting the energy, because they want to avoid these power surges and stuff, which reminds me exactly of what you just said with Nest in the US, because it's basically the same thing, right? And this is already the case nowadays. And of course, now you're adding another, I want to say, factor of complexity. If you have giant power banks driving around everywhere, what does it mean, But in the end, they're already doing it. It's just another piece to the puzzle, I would say. But from the experience side, I think it's probably a different story, as you mentioned as well. Like, how do you feel about that you're giving consent for these things to happen without you potentially knowing that they're happening or when they're happening? It probably makes you feel uncomfortable, or maybe almost like an invasion of privacy, maybe,
Yeah.
So I think these are things which have to be addressed in a meaningful way, and not just like, well, sorry, it's in the fine print, you have to sign it, otherwise it doesn't work kind of thing. But like, where we have to pick up people early and explain why this is the case, And I think this is always a very good thing to do, because you don't want the users to be in the dark and they go like, what just happened kind of thing, but more like, hey, did you know we're doing this? Or did you know these things about the power grid? And do you know about power surges and how we use electricity? And like the educational part, to really take people by the hand and explain to them why things are happening so that they can buy into it and they can understand, because once you build up this kind of level of understanding and this level of trust, I think trust is very important in this concept, right? Then most likely people will buy, that makes sense. I understand. Makes sense. Sure. Go ahead, do it, and it's not that the middle of the day your house will be out of electricity and you're like, well, tough luck kind of thing, right? So that's not going to happen, because they know you have an EV, you have a power bank, you have the PV. It's not suddenly you're going to sit in the dark or on the cold just because of that, right?
Yeah, I remember looking at something where someone was building their own sort of energy monitor for their own house, and they had this device that I think like clamped onto the main electricity feed for your house, and it was able to detect the level of current flowing through it. But they were able to, and I don't know exactly how this worked, but through this, whatever signature it was of the amount of current draw or how the current was being drawn, they were able to isolate which devices in the house were most likely on just by looking at that data, of what electricity was flowing through the cable, whether it was the specific, I don't know whether it was the specific, wattage or amp draw, or whether it was, I don't know, something else more complicated. I have no idea. But they were able to build their own sort of little dashboard saying, in my house, over the past week, we've used 3 hours of the hairdryer and the fridge has been on for 10 hours and all those sorts of things, which is very, very clever. But again, it plays into that whole, the more we connect things together, the more we have sensors in different places to enable this smart stuff, the more you start to think about, well, hold on a minute, what privacy concerns might drop out of that? What negative, what could someone with a malicious intent, do with that kind of data or with that kind of level of control? And, we obviously live in quite scary times with things that are going on in the world right now. Can you imagine what would happen if someone gained access to a system that had like remote shut off to people's heating, for example? That's kind of supremely scary. There's challenges there as well in terms of, security and big problems to solve. Exciting problems and cool problems to solve, but also lots of things to think about.
Oh, for sure. And I think especially like if I put my German hat on, I feel like in Germany we are always very privacy conscious, like I still feel like in many shops in Germany, you can't use credit cards because, it's going to be tied to you. And
I visited Berlin a few years ago. And if you go off the main tourist areas, as soon as you leave, all the restaurants are cash only. And I found that really, really, really strange because I don't think I've ever been to any other major European city and not been able to get by with just a credit card. I found that really, really strange.
Yeah. It is, and I think it's at least two factors coming together. Number one is privacy concerns in the sense of I don't want the credit card company to know where I go eat and like build like a habit profile kind of thing of the people. From privacy point of view. And I think the other one is the cost which is involved for the merchant, right? Because as soon as you pay with a credit card, the merchant has to pay a fee, like, I don't know, whatever percentage depending on the credit card company. And they're just not willing to do that, especially smaller stores, right? If you like go to a small, they have like these called Spätkauf in Berlin, which are like the small stores which are open almost 24/7. And they have like all these chips and beer and cigarettes and like all this stuff, or magazines, or maybe a pack of butter you forgot to buy, And they don't accept credit cards because for them it's like, well, if you come pay for a pack of butter, I don't want to pay whatever fee on top of this pack of butter, right? It's like, so absolutely what you say is totally fair and makes absolute sense. Of course, stuff like this shouldn't happen, right? That somebody can take over a system and any of that. And we will for sure do whatever we can to not let it happen, obviously, especially again, speaking as a German who is very privacy conscious. So.
No, it's just interesting exploring or at least I find it interesting exploring the problem space and thinking about some of these challenges in what we're going to face in the near future. So I don't know how much you're able to share, but I thought it'd be interesting. Obviously, you're in the industry doing no doubt exciting things. Is there anything you could share with us about things that are coming? Maybe anything that we haven't talked about so far? What does the future look like for green energy? Is there anything that else that you can share about that?
Well, I'm not sure what I can share, but I think what and I think I teased on this in the beginning is like that we are in this area in a situation where we can really think out of the box and not just try one-to-one to translate what currently exists and redo this for EVs kind of thing, but really think about what are possibilities, right? And so if I give you one example, which is not future example, but the current one, which I find very interesting is, Audi, which is also part of the Volkswagen Group, they built a so-called charging hub in Nuremberg in Germany, which is basically a place where you can book a high-powered charger before you drive there. You have an app, you book a charging spot, you drive there, you plug in your car downstairs, and you go upstairs in this lounge environment. You can have a coffee and you can chat with fellow Audi drivers about whatever, And so I've never seen this with a gas station, right?
Like an airport lounge, so somewhere with a degree of like exclusivity and, special access. Because I think part of what drives airport lounges, and obviously because that's a paid for premium service that's only availed of by a certain number of people, is obviously that feeling of exclusivity, right? I think that's a key driver in that, which sounds like what you're describing here. It's almost like an exclusive charging station with premium features.
Exactly. And Audi being a premium brand, this is something that they cater to the people who drive Audis, and it's like, that's what I give this a try. And I think this is, I'm not sure if ever somebody thought about turning a gas station into a lounge kind of thing. Probably not. But so they're trying to make it nice and I want to say desirable to actually go there, have a coffee, chat with other people, maybe use it as a meetup point close to the Nürnberg ring and stuff, So it comes with a certain feeling, I want to say, it becomes an experience suddenly. So there's a lot of opportunity which can be done, which has not been done. And I want to say the sky's the limit. You can dream up what you want kind of thing. How can we turn the charging experience into something which is nice, And usually people say, it takes so long to charge. But it usually takes so long or it feels it takes so long because, sure, if you stand somewhere in the rain and you have a low-powered charger and it just takes so long, But if you are in a place, you have a good conversation and a free coffee kind of thing, it doesn't feel like you're waiting for something. You're just having a good time and you return to your car and everything is nice, So just like at the airport lounge, I think nobody actually likes being at the airport. It's just a hassle. You have to get to the airport. It takes time by public transport maybe. And then you have to wait there. And nowadays, especially security lineups take so long. I'd rather be there 2.5 hours before than an hour just in case. And then you're stuck at the airport and you're sitting on one of these uncomfortable chairs or benches, So it's like somebody decided, if you can turn this into a better experience, not that people actually want to come to the airport, unless the Singapore one maybe, how can we make this really nice as part of the experience, you know? I mean, we cannot avoid that you have to come early and do all these checkups, but we can try at least to make the experience nicer, you know, so that you are there, you have free Wi-Fi, you can have a beverage, you know, and this is something we can also think about.
Right. So I was going to ask a few sort of more general sort of quick fire questions. Just I always like to try and include some more sort of just, silly little things.
Sure.
So first one is, what's your favorite UI and why? What's your favorite UI and why?
That's a very good question. My favorite UI. I'm honestly not sure. I really like the things, a very general reply, but I really like the things which just work, right? Like what I mentioned earlier, like the copy and paste across devices where you don't even feel, like where the design is not even visible in that sense. It just works, like design is going out of the way. Like these kind of things I really enjoy. And the opposite probably is something like where you notice that something obviously doesn't work or is shoehorned into something, you know, then to me it's like, sorry, that doesn't work.
So would you say Apple? Because you mentioned Apple earlier. I think clearly an influence for you. Or
I think so, because often they seem to get things right. You know, it's like our dynamic island, right? I mean, everybody hates the notch or loves to hate the notch, I guess, you know. But then they came up with this dynamic island, and suddenly it's like a whole marketing thing on it, what you can do with a notch and how wonderful it is, and all these kind of things. To me, is mind blowing. But
so what's? Sorry, I don't know what that is. What's dynamic island?
Oh, like from the new iPhone 14 Pro, whatever. Like they have like this notch at the top.
I haven't seen
like this, like the pill shape thing at the top. And they're basically, because they know they have this hardware constraint there, they have to have the camera and the sensors there for the Face ID. They have a pill shape cut out in the display at the top. But instead of just having it there, they used design and UI interface design to turn this into a feature. So like when you now have notifications and stuff, they all show up around and it's part of this little pill there, and they turn it into an experience. So they're not trying to hide it, they're actually emphasizing it.
Okay.
And it's amazing. If you haven't seen it, there's a bunch of videos where they show it off from the keynote. And this is, you know, like Apple at its best, where they manage to sell you a hardware constraint in a wonderful way. You know, everybody wants this because it has this hardware constraint. Yeah. It's amazing.
That's kind of brilliant. I always do like to do that though in my work, is if you have a negative, if something bad happens, always try and turn it into a positive. You know what I mean? Always try and turn it around and say, what can we get out of this as a positive?
Absolutely.
I am actually, I must admit, a little bit of a slight Apple convert. So for the longest time, I resisted Apple tech. I was kind of one of those people who said it's expensive, you know, it's not worth it. And last year, I'm speaking to you now on an M1 MacBook Pro, and it kind of is. It is pretty good. I mean, I'm not going to go as far as say it's perfect. I've not completely switched to the cult of Apple like that. I think there's flaws with it, but it is an incredible laptop. You know, the power it has, the fact that it stays cool, the battery life, it's very impressive, but it does have a pretty sizable notch at the top.
Exactly, there's the notch again. Yes, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. It's not perfect, but I want to say it's very close to that place. Like if you compare to other devices or solutions, it usually is able to pull really cool stuff off. If they want to, I think.
So who do you admire most in the world of, you know, design, UI, UX? You know, who's you know, if you had to pick one character that, you think is a inspiration?
That's really hard. I mean, there's so many brilliant people out there who achieved so many things on so many different levels. I would have to throw out a couple of names, I guess, like Steve Jobs, obviously, who's to me not a designer in that sense, but like a brilliant business person, I guess, who was really good at what you just said, like phrasing things and really like giving things a really positive spin, you know, I guess maybe in his own bubble to a degree, but he was able to extend through this bubble, like to really leave, like, as he used to say, like a dent in the universe kind of thing. Then, of course, Dieter Rams, for example, you know, it's like the impact on hardware design and the things he did and is doing is very impressive. And but to me, another person is also Peter Skillman, who used to run, for example, the design team at Nokia, where I used to work in the past. is somebody, I don't know, he's just this presence in the room, and his leadership style and the way he addresses things design related and talks about these things and is so knowledgeable about all these kind of things. That is probably the closest I got to somebody who's like, wow, like really somebody to aspire to step into their footsteps, I guess is what you say.
Sounds interesting. Not someone that I'm familiar with, but I'm assuming I can look him up and find a little bit about him. Cool. So what about resources for keeping up to date? What's, if you were to, maybe listeners to the podcast who are trying to break into the industry, interested in this as a career, what resources are your go-tos for, staying up to date and staying current with what's going on?
Oh, that's a really good question. There's probably a mix. What I would recommend, and I think I have to keep it high level, is certain books, I guess, to build a base about like design and design thinking, I want to say, or things which have been done, or overall to get an idea about the things which are possible. But then also podcasts like yours, like the people who actually bring the people together and talk about these kind of topics so people can listen to and absorb, like be like a sponge, absorb things and maybe get a spark of an idea somewhere here and there to inspire people. But I think also, there's a lot of, for example, like boot camps and all these kind of things, I guess, varying degrees of quality for people to start, to do these kind of things, to break into the industry. And I think it's also just often, spend your time or your free time in trying things out, there's like Behance and Dribble, just look around what's there. Is there something which inspires you? Can you try to, use Figma to build something on your own, just try it out. Is this something you like doing? Or maybe, I don't know, like rebuild an interface, take a screenshot from an interface you like and then just try to rebuild it, just like step by step and see if there's something actually you would like doing. And probably one other thing is which I think is still underrated, is mentoring, that you get in touch with somebody who can give you some insights and talk to you from time to time, hopefully on a more regular basis, to share information or to be able to answer your questions and give some, I want to say, more personable advice how somebody could break into an industry, And I don't know. Or if you already work in a company where they have design, but you happen to work in a different function, just reach out to the designers and ask, like, hey, can you maybe do some company internal internship kind of thing, or can you have some guidance and can you do something because you want to maybe change careers but you're not sure about it? I think I would just openly bring it up, because I think companies, I feel if I take a step back as a manager, I feel always sad when people leave companies, obviously, because people are not happy with either the company or the conditions or the manager or the stuff they're working on. So I would always encourage people to, try first in the company itself, if possible, to look for a different opportunity, even if it's a different field, just contact somebody. Usually they're nice people, right? Just ask, hey, can I do as I said, like an internship and stuff with you guys? Can I learn a little bit from you? Can I participate in some of your research just to get an idea about things, what you guys are actually doing, And maybe that way get a step, like a foot into the door, I would say.
Cool. I think that's sage advice. I think, mentoring is certainly an interesting one. I don't know if it's something you've got first-hand experience of, but how would someone go about getting a mentor, do you think? Or how would you even find one? That's, if you can, I don't even know if you can share that, but it's something that I would struggle with, because I've never had a mentor in the past, and I think it would be something good to do, but I wouldn't know where to start in terms of, how do you find someone? You ask them, are you asking a lot of that person? Because, asking them to give up their time, essentially. How would you go about it?
That's a very, very good question. So I also did not have a mentor for the longest time, I have to admit. And once I had one, it was game changing, I would say. And for me, the situation was that the mentor did not have a design background, but more like an engineering and a business background. And which was really, really important to me as a designer, because I find we designers, we stick too much to design and less look over what else is left and right. What can I actually bring to the table besides UX, UI kind of thing, but how can I impact the business as a whole? So that was very important. Yeah. And for me, it was somebody working at the same company at SAP. I think other options would probably be, number one, look in the same company. If there's somebody from a background or a person you like, or who's more senior, or even at the same level, just has a different kind of background, I would just go out and ask. I know some companies also have internal mentorship and coaching programs, really, like most likely the bigger companies, I assume, but I think also smaller companies and startups. I think there's also online services like, I'm not sure what it's called, like adplist.org or so, where you can sign up to be a mentor and also try to find a mentor there. And of course, in your circles, in that sense, right? Like everybody usually knows a bunch of people who know a bunch of people, like, or people in the same office building, for example. You cross path every day in the cafeteria or whatever. When you talk about stuff, maybe just ask them. So it really depends. I don't think there's a easy answer to the question.
Yeah, it's just difficult, isn't it? If you, it feels a lot to ask of someone, right? Especially if you don't know them super well. So yeah, it's a cool thing, but getting there could be difficult. So yeah, last of the quick questions. I just wondered if you'd got any sort of bad usability nightmares or sort of a terrible experience that you've had recently that you could share. Maybe anything funny or anything like that.
Me personally, I don't think I had anything major in the near past, let's say. But I have always two things which are top of my mind because I find them very interesting. So there's this one picture floating around on the internet where you can see like where the ignition of a car is, and they happen to place not the ignition like next to the steering wheel, but rather in front of it, kind of thing. And you can see that where usually the ignition is, there's a lot of scratches there from all the people trying to shove the key in, but it's not there, kind of thing. And to me, this is like, yes, you're basically missing the expectation here from what you built up as an industry over the years.
Yeah.
Just always, and it happened to be apparently a rental car, which is really interesting. And I think the other example I really find, well, I guess I would find it hilarious. It wouldn't be so sad. I think Citibank in 2021, they accidentally sent $500 million because of a terrible user interface. There's a story, I think, on Ars Technica about that. And they have a screenshot of the interface, and it looks like, let's say, Windows like 3.11 kind of thing. And it's just, it's like really bad, these kind of things. And so avoidable, I want to say. But of course, I'm sure there's reasons behind it, especially with the ignition thing, from the car industry. I'm sure, not that I'm sure, but I assume maybe technical reasons, or price reasons or something. I cannot imagine somebody deciding from a design point of view, let's just place this thing somewhere else, and let's see how people react. But yeah, sometimes it's the small things which actually have a big impact on.
Right, so thank you very much for your time, Wolfgang. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I'm sure our listeners will have really enjoyed listening to that. Yeah, have you got a social handle or anything like that you want to share with them?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having me, Andrew. It was really a pleasure being on your show. It's really fantastic to speak with you. People can find me on Twitter at Wolfgang Bremer, and I'm kind of active there, so you can hit me up over there.
Super. Thank you so much for your time, Wolfgang, and we'll speak again soon. Bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
So what did you make of that, David?
I think it's really interesting, that is. So obviously EV charging is like it's a complicated thing, isn't it? So I'm glad that there's some smart people working on it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. The thing that I'm worried about is people who don't have a driveway, don't have access to charging facilities, the fact that that's going to cost them so much more to charge up their cars on public charge points. I don't think anyone's got a solution to that yet. Well, not a viable one anyway. We'll see what happens.
True. But there's plenty of places, even in the small town that we live in, there's a car park that's got a fair few spaces.
Oh no, it's not the spaces, it's the cost.
Yeah.
You'll end up, if you've got lucky enough to have a driveway and a private charger, you'll pay very little for charging your car. But if you unfortunately have to park on a street, you've probably got a lower income already. You've not been able to afford a house with a driveway or a garage. Massive generalization here, obviously. But you've then got to pay more to charge your car, in a public place.
Yeah. Can't solve it though, can I? Bad usability nightmare. Right, this is a really horrendous one, but actually this is nothing to do with usability as such, but it is definitely to do with technology. Although, it's more to do with people using technology, really. So this is an article. I've got an article from BBC News here. This was a surgery sends out a text message. It's really horrible. They send out a text message. They mean to send out a message saying, "Happy Christmas, everyone." But actually, they send a message saying, "You've got cancer," which is, right, I know I shouldn't be laughing at that, but it is horrible. People were waiting for messages from their doctors and whatever.
Test results and things like that.
Test results, yeah, and they got this thing. So I think everyone got the same message, and the message said, here's your diagnosis for whatever, blah, blah, blah. Your diagnosis is aggressive lung cancer with I don't know what the word is.
Metastases.
Metastases.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it ends the text message with thanks, which is, I mean, you don't really want to be thanked after you've had a message of probably the worst message you've ever had in your life. And then they send a message straight back saying, please accept our sincere apologies for the previous text message. This has been sent in error. Our message to you should have read, we wish you a Merry Christmas. Honestly, this is the absolutely most horrendous thing, the most horrendous mistake that anybody could make. To send out a text message saying, you've got cancer. Oh, by the way, we meant to say Happy Christmas.
How do you... How do you think it happened?
How do you come back from this?
How do you think it happened?
How did this happen? Oh, I don't... Well, I mean, a mixture between technology and somebody using the technology, I assume. That maybe they copied and pasted the wrong thing. Hang on, let me read the article. Just people saying, is this some kind of sick joke? Blimey, someone saying, it completely took me by surprise. Somebody just burst into tears, which I think you would do. This is the most horrendous text message. So this article that I've been looking at doesn't actually say how it happened. But, I mean, technology... That's the thing with technology. It does go wrong, doesn't it?
Yeah, but that's a human error, right? The technology hasn't gone wrong by itself, presumably.
I reckon it's a human error.
Well, it can't be anything but a human error. Whether it's a developer human error or probably more likely the operator. So, what do you reckon they did? Like do you reckon they copied and pasted the wrong thing or something, or they thought they'd copied it and pasted it and press send, but they still had the old message on the clipboard or something, or
something like that? Yeah. It says it was sent out to almost 8,000 patients. Jesus. Yeah, somebody was waiting for a smear test result, and then they got this text message. You would be so upset, wouldn't you?
But I'd be confused. I'd be confused. Well, I mean, yeah. I'd gone for a smear test and I've got lung cancer. I'd be a little bit... That's not the right body part, is it?
Well, no, true. But I've seen articles before where people get sent the wrong text message, or, I've got sent the wrong text message from somebody. It's just that this particular example is probably the most extreme. I can't think of anything more extreme than this.
Well, I was going to ask... Do you think this is worse or better than the Hawaii missile alert system text message?
I think this is worse because a text message saying that a nuclear missile is on the way is probably a bit kind of out there, isn't it? It's a bit implausible to start with because it's rare that nuclear missiles are sent and launched, isn't it? Whereas people get text messages from the doctors quite a lot.
I think this is less bad because... If I got a text message about a nuclear alert, I would believe it because that is a thing that could have happened. However, if I'd got a text message about having lung cancer and not having had any tests done, then I'd probably think, I think there's an error here. So, although it got sent to although it got sent to 8,000 people, presumably only a very small number of those could have potentially believed it because they were in a situation where they have had tests recently or whatever. Yeah. So I think impact-wise, that's a lot less. So I'm going to say that the Hawaii missile one was worse, but it's a close call. It is a close call.
Yeah, definitely. I just like the way that... No, I don't like, but I just find it just ridiculous that they waited half an hour to send a reply. And
half an hour? It took them half an hour to
Oh, sorry. Yeah. This has been sent in error. It should have read, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Please accept our sincere apologies for the previous text message sent.
I want to know more.
Yeah.
I want to know more. I want to know how it happened.
Yeah, I want to know more actually. Yeah, I found this article on the BBC, but I'm sure it's covered many times in lots of places. It's from the town that I grew up in as well.
Is it?
Yeah, it's from Doncaster. Anyway, that is the end of the podcast. If you've seen or used something unusable recently, we want to hear about it. You can email us at podcast@theunusable.com, and we're on Twitter @unusablepodcast. If you've enjoyed this, there's plenty more. The last episode was called Unsupported Eyeballs, and on YouTube we've got a video called What If Your Shower Was a Website? We also have unusable t-shirts and hoodies available to buy on the website podcast.theunusable.com. Music is by Gold5472. Please subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts so you'll get a notification about the next one. Okay, that's it. Until next time, bye.
Goodbye.